Well, good evening, everyone. Well, you know me, Caroline Menjivar from the Mayor's Office, but I wanted to have two other people introduce themselves who are the three of us are gonna give this presentation and then we'll kick it off. So Victoria.
Hi, I'm Victoria Simon. I'm the Director of Operations for the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. And I was part of the process of putting together the Green New Deal as well as the toolkits. And I'm really excited. This is our first presentation on the toolkits. So take it easy on us, but also ask lots of questions. So we're ready for the next group.
Vahid.
And I am Vahid Corsan, West Valley Area Rep.
Yeah, so Vahid and I are the Green New Deal liaisons. We work closely with the sustainability team on this. And like Victoria mentioned, you're our first group with this presentation. So while we are getting this information out there, we'd also want to utilize this opportunity to just get feedback from you as a neighborhood council to see if this makes sense for y'all, if there's any tweaks we need to make before, we start doing 3 of these a week. Okay, then without further ado, here we go. All right, so what is the Green New Deal? I mean, we relaunched this a couple years ago, right before the pandemic hit, right? We expanded on our 2015 plan. And if you haven't had a copy, if you don't have a copy, I highly recommend you get a copy. And if for some reason you have really, really extra time, read a couple of chapters a day. It is pretty thick, so we thought, hey, what can we do to pull stuff from this Green New Deal book that will make it a little bit more easier to digest and attract more people and engage more people on it, right? So if you don't have the book, and obviously, as part of as being green, and shouldn't request, I guess, an actual physical copy, please go to the plan.lmayor.org to get a digital version of it and read through it. So from that stemmed the Green New Deal Neighborhood Council Toolkit. So before, again, a lot of these things we said before the pandemic hit, we had this idea, right? But before the pandemic hit, we thought we want to put together a advisory group that can help us pull actions from this Green New Deal booklet, pull out goals that we felt were reflected across the entire city of LA, that we wanted to engage in particular neighborhood councils to say, I can look at this and I can accomplish this as a neighborhood council. So right before we selected specific advisory groups, we did an outreach. We looked to get representatives from all geographic areas, East Valley to San Pedro, to represent in an advisory group and help us ensure that we were going in the right direction, items that the city could look at, your neighbors could look at and implement. The whole premise behind this is to empower neighborhood councils, empower residents to be able to say, oh, check, I did something from the Green New Deal. I'm doing my part in achieving these goals from the plan. So from there, we had 10 action guides that you can see right here. From as the most famous one is planting trees to helping businesses go green, right? We have 8 of them published online on that same website that I mentioned earlier. And you go on the link for Neighborhood Council Toolkit and all those PDFs are there. 2 of them we have waited to release just because when we launched this during the Congress of Neighborhoods councils, we were right in smack in the midst of the pandemic when it was the strongest. And 2 of them have to do with hosting cleanups and how to have a zero waste neighborhood council meeting, which we knew weren't relevant at that time. We definitely didn't want to promote having community cleanups during that time. But those, as soon as we get full guidance to fully gather, those will be coming out.
And I think just to say that, all 10 of those guides were sort of like the top ones that were voted upon by the Neighborhood Council Advisory Group. But, this is supposed to be a living toolkit. So if there are others that you think we should add to this toolbox of how people can take action, we'd love to have feedback. Or if you think, as we're going through the toolkits, if there are specific ones that you think we could add, like from your own experience of like, well, this is a good way to, you know, plant friendly landscaping. Here's a resource. We love all of that feedback.
Do you guys want feedback as we go, or would you prefer we wait till the end? What's better for you guys?
It'd be good if you want, at least put in the chat box so you don't forget. Yeah. But to piggyback up on Victoria, you know, we started with around like 30 action guides that we thought would, you know, really resonate with people, and it came down to 10 during the discussions with the advisory group. So during this presentation, I'll go over each of these action guides and taking out the key information from the actual PDF that lives online. And each action guide has areas of why this is important, the benefits to the community and environment, and then actions of how neighborhood council members and community members can get involved in that specific area. So the idea is for neighborhood councils to look at this and say, oh, these are something that we can do, right? Or it's an individual. So we'll start off with the first one, and it's plant free trees in your neighborhood, right? This is something that is always on top of, it's such a very popular topic, right? A lot of people, free trees, we want trees here, it's the shade, right? The benefits to the environment are endless, right? It lowers temperatures, the air quality, right? So in the opportunities for action for neighborhood councils, we're asking neighborhood councils to host their own free street trees, right? The most recent one in the San Fernando Valley was actually this past Saturday in Arleta, where they gave away free street trees and free fruit trees. And as you can imagine, the RSVP list closes within hours of it being publicized, right? So we're looking for more neighborhood councils to partner with the city, to partner with city plans to say, I want to host this event at my area, right? Not have to drive all the way to X, Y, Z. Volunteer at one of these tree adoption events. Volunteer to sign up people to get a free tree. Do people know that they can get a free yard tree delivered straight to their door, especially now during this pandemic, when a lot of people want contactless items, right? Or become a city plants block leader, where you can get yards for a specific block and be delivered at the same time. So these are some of the items that a neighborhood council can choose to be to do actions with in this item. The second action that we chose is planting friendly landscaping in your neighborhood, right? To tie in with saving water. Benefits again, right? Like I mentioned, save water, create habitats. You can be deemed as a natural habitat depending on what you plant and stuff, saving thousands and thousands of gallons. Remember the campaign we had of Save the Drop, tying in with that. And opportunities for action are this is more of hosting webinars, right? We can't take over a neighbor's yard and say, I'm going to do this in your front yard, but it's hosting webinars for your community to understand the benefits that come out of it, and the rebates are available to people. The one that comes out the most is the LEDWP's turf replacement program that gives rebates up to $15,000. It's $3 per square foot with a minimum of 250 square foot if you're taking away all your grass and replacing it with California-Friendly Landscaping. It's also about connecting community members to nonprofits that help with this, right? Does the community of Greater Toluca Lake know about Theodore Payne Foundation and how they're very well involved in this specific action, right? Host landscaping workshops to show what you can do with mulch, how you can get free mulch, what you can do outside of having grass in front of your yard.
And they also host in English and Spanish. And these guides are actually also in English and Spanish.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. Yeah, very, very key. We definitely wanted to make sure that this was, again, when we got representation from the entire city, it's because we wanted it to be reflective of the city of LA, the residents. So we had translation during the advisory group for certain board members because they were monolingual Spanish speakers, and also these PDFs are in Spanish as well to ensure everyone has equal access to all of these. The third action guide in this toolkit is the one where we're hoping to get people to make their next car electric, right? We're seeing GMC, Ford, all these companies understanding that they need to switch to this route, right? So that's one area of the campaign for awareness. The other areas for the community members understanding that we ourselves also need to turn towards that route, right? So the opportunities for action here are sharing information just like the other action guides on the benefits of it, right? Talking about the programs of Blue LA, talking about how here in the San Fernando Valley in Pacoima, we have the first ever electric vehicle share program called Envoy, where you can rent it per minute, per hour, per day, right? One of the first of its kind here in the East Valley, right? Sharing about, like I mentioned, Blue LA hosting a National Drive Electric Week event. This would have to be post-COVID because you'd have to be in the same car with strangers, but these are just ideas to keep in mind, right? Share with people the rebates. I think when it comes to a lot of these things, people think like, no, it's so expensive. But having people understand the rebates for solar, for landscaping, for your electric car could persuade people the other way, right? So ensuring that they know the advantages of all these initiatives we're pushing.
I think that's a good point, Caroline, too, that, these are not just, especially when you think about electric cars, you tend to think of it as being maybe slightly elitist or just for certain people. But this, these are like Blue LA and like Envoy, what Caroline was talking about are opportunities for, electric car rental. And actually Blue LA is specifically targeted towards low income populations. And we ensured that was still running during the pandemic because a lot of people rely on it, not only to do their shopping or whatever they, go to the grocery store or whatever they needed to do, but also for, the gig economy. So it was really important that we keep that program running. And so each of these toolkits has elements that anybody could participate in, whether you own your home, there's opportunities to be able to still access, a free tree. Whether you can buy a car, you can still rent one. So each of the toolkits have that element in it.
If I could also add for the electric one, there's a lot of rebates, and I think this does a great job of gathering all the information for one. For example, like the DWP rebate, I didn't know, and I've owned an EV. But I also didn't know that, a renter could apply and get the DWP rebate. So there are a lot of these hidden rebates that make getting an EV affordable. And I think this toolkit, once you go through the links, it does a good job of laying out all the benefits for making the switch.
Yeah, the idea was to put everything in a one-stop shop, right? Usually we're talking about, you have to go to DWP to find this out. This application's here. Sorry about that, should have muted it. And then you have to go here for vehicles, right? This toolkit, we did all that work where we pulled all the information into one PDF, and we didn't make it a novel long, easy to read, and has all the information in one location. The next one, solar. So this one in particular, I would hear cases of people would call me and say, hey, Caroline, this person knocked on my door. They're saying they're about solar. They want to give me this program, right? We would hear as area representatives concerns from community members of people, they thought they were being scammed, right? So people were hesitant in saying, yes, I want solar, because they didn't know which program, which company was actually legit, right? So when we talk about bringing awareness to the community about installing solar power, we talked in the conversations we had with the advisory group, it was about ensuring the community knew which were the correct routes, which were scams, right? So about a month ago, one example I have is Sun Valley Neighborhood Council actually invited DWP, their beautification committee invited DWP, and they held a webinar on just this exact thing about the information DWP has on solar power. Again, the rebates, right? Again, the benefits, the process for it, right? So in this particular action guide, neighborhood councils, again, can go and purchase solar panels for individuals, can't, one of the main thing you could do here is awareness and hosting webinars just to bring that information to them. We're bringing DWP employees to share that information with your community, with your schools, right? So talking about the shared solar program, this is something that was really important because one of the things that came out was, how can renters be involved, right? Just like Vahid mentioned with the rebate for the EV for renters, it's the same thing here for participating in programs for renters, which is what the shared solar program is. And then another action is to apply to sell excess solar energy back to DWP through another program, which is the feed-in tariff program. All right, next action item on our list is grow your own food. Community gardens, right? And the lack of community gardens in our area. So this, as we know, saves money on groceries. You're eating healthier, you're reducing emissions, and you're bringing healthy foods to perhaps areas that have food deserts that perhaps don't have access to healthy foods, right? So these are one of more hands-on, fun opportunities for actions for neighborhood councils, right? So this is where you can host and gather communities to host a contest like crop swap, right? Like they do in South LA, there's a crop swap LA, contacting them to see how can we do that here in the greater Toluca Lake, right? How can we, find out who in the community grows their own food and can we do crop swap here? It also reduces food because perhaps that resident has an abundance of vegetables and fruits and they would rather swap for something else, right? How to show people how to regrow and grow vegetables. There's a church here in Van Nuys that is relaunching their community garden, and they have plots where people can come and on it for a yearly fine, get that little plot and grow their own vegetables there, right? Connecting to things like that. Participate in free urban gardening workshops, showing that or bringing that to the greater Toluca Lake. Sometimes these programs are near Griffith Park and someone, us for the Valley, maybe not for so much for greater Toluca Lake, you're a little bit closer to that area, but it's still a drive for Valley people, right? How can we bring stuff like that? How can your neighborhood council bring programs like that to your specific area?
And I just want to make a pitch for the Urban Agriculture Zone program in particular. We are searching for people interested in applying to this program. So if that's an opportunity for you guys to promote the program and look for opportunities to apply, it's one that we're really trying to grow. So please check it out.
Okay. And I mentioned this just right now with the previous action guide, and this ties in beautifully with reducing food waste at home, right? This action guide was very informative in the sense that it tells you how vegetables and fruits should be stored in refrigerators, right? Something that I didn't even think about that helps them last even longer, right? So I can imagine a lot of people had no idea that if you store them in a certain way that they will last longer, that you won't have to be wasting your food, right? Because we all know we buy that batch of cilantro, we only use a bit and then we throw away the rest because we forget about it. Same thing goes for lettuce, right? So how can we reduce this waste? Save money on groceries, not having to always go buy lettuce every week because we wasted that, or the broccoli, right? Reduce the need for landfills and increase the health of local soil, right? Things that the neighborhood council can do is host composting workshops so people can compost in their own homes, right? bring in tie-in sanitation, come in and do more of a hands-on instruction on how to compost? Or is there opportunity for in the greater Toluca Lake to have a community compost location? You know, I know there are some here in the East Valley. I'm not sure if there's one in greater Toluca Lake, but maybe that's a room for opportunity for your neighborhood council, right? And then show people how to read food labels, you know, things that say Best Buy, we have the assumption that if it's that day, the sticker says Best Buy April 13th, and today we have to throw everything out, right? Educate the community on what exactly that means. And it's a matter of spreading the word and spreading this information, right? Or anything?
Well, this one I just really like because I actually, even though now I cover food systems, I learned so much about how to keep my produce and the stuff in my refrigerator for longer, just reading the toolkit, which was maybe slightly embarrassing, but also saved a lot of money because I realized like, okay, I need to store the produce in a different way. And, it's kind of inspiring because it requires very little on your side, but actually saves a lot. And if you look at greenhouse gas emissions, so much of it does come from the food that we put in the trash. And, just the less you use, really, that's the best kind of climate action that you can take, is just not doing the thing itself.
And I would add, like when we talk about reduced food waste at home is also like the office. It's also, if you're a nonprofit or a community organization, I've been responsible for getting food for nonprofit meetings, and countless times, I purchased the wrong food and it goes to waste. Like, this is an opportunity to save money for your nonprofit, for your community organizations, your faith-based organizations, and your businesses as well, just by using the toolkit, figuring out how best to store food, purchase food, maintain food. So in the long run, you're saving money that way as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Vahid, because the other two action guides that we won't talk about today that I mentioned were the community cleanup and how to host a zero waste neighborhood council meeting, has items on this as well, right? How to do a community cleanup with no waste, right? What kind of foods to bring, how to do the neighborhood council without throwing away food waste. Before COVID, there'd be plenty of neighborhood council meetings I'd go to, and there'd be so much food left over. I just wonder, where would that go? Is it being thrown away? So this definitely is tied in other action guides as well.
I'll just add that when we released the Green New Deal, we had it at the mayor's home at Getty House. And so one of the things that was part of that event was that it was going to be a zero waste event. And it was interesting working with the event planners, thinking through like, okay, there's going to be some finger food, but it has to require like 0 utensils and no plates and no toothpicks. And at first they were really baffled, like, well, then what are we going to do? And actually, it was quite simple. And after that event, they decided from then on to host more of those types. And they stopped using the kinds of cups that they were really against using the cups that we proposed, but then they actually love them. So you never know, when you introduce something and say, let's just try it, I think it's a real opportunity to educate. And also things have come a long way in terms of like the products that are available, or the just ingenious ideas of like how to avoid certain waste products.
Mm-hmm. And then this one in particular, I think really super beneficial across the whole city, but in Greater Toluca Lake, you have a lot of businesses, right? You have your corridors of businesses. I imagine when I look at this action guide before I presented here, I was like, I can imagine this being like a really good action guide for the neighborhood council, is helping businesses go green. And it's being tied in perfectly with a new program that's being launched April 22nd on behalf of sanitation. But opportunities for here is they're looking for business ambassadors, and these business ambassadors would help businesses become certified as green. The program is dedicated in providing, it's like a free consultation for businesses on how to improve certain areas of their business and aiming for them to be more eco-friendly, right? You would engage with local businesses, bids, chambers, in connecting with businesses, and there's an actual checklist that they can go through. This like, we'll call them a consultant, will come through and check off the things where they can improve, and they get a certificate. Just like you can see here in this photo, this is actually a business, the first business at the Van Nuys Airport that was certified as a green business. And we as a city have a collection, have a list of all these businesses that are green, right? So I just see this as such an opportunity to also connect with biz and chambers and neighborhood councils. Vahi, did you want to share anything else more on this?
I think it's also an opportunity for, so I've been speaking to the Department of Sanitation and the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance on this ambassadorship program. And one of the things is it's an opportunity for organizations like a neighborhood council, like a chamber of commerce, like a business organization, but I'll keep it to neighborhood councils, to be a certifying body that certifies businesses as meeting the criteria. So it's a good way to have some program that you're offering that's community facing, that gets you engaged with your stakeholders on sustainability issues, that also gives them a perception of, okay, this is what my neighborhood council can do for me. So I would recommend that even if you're not a business yourself, to consider as a neighborhood council to sign up to be a body that works as a business ambassador to certify or help identify businesses to be certified to Department of Sanitation for this program.
Okay. And then the last action guide we'll go over today, definitely at the least. Oh no, what happened here? Sorry about that. Is the monitoring and improving air quality, right? Your neighborhood and household, especially here in the East Valley in particular. You know, we have the landfills here and what happened in the West Valley as well, right? So these are a little smaller for opportunities for action, but still nonetheless super important to share with the community, right? How to prevent hospital visits, asthma, save money on medical bills, and similar things like that. Is opportunities for action would be to rent or buy an air quality sensor to monitor the air quality around us, right? And to share that information with the community. Hey, today, this is what it is. Tomorrow, this is what it is, right? Just so people keep track and are aware of this on a daily basis. And then, of course, just like, although we didn't put this on every other action guide, the actual phrase, but there's always room for advocacy in every single one of them. So advocate for clean air and continue to hold us in the city accountable and every other level of government to achieve clean air for all.
I know this is still a ways off, but I want to say it's September 17th is Clean Air Day, California, and it's in our tool guide. Just the number of resources and opportunities to like kind of create some friendly competition around, you know, who can have basically their cleanest air day, and also, you know, ways to kind of help inspire those around you as well as yourself to do things that reduce air pollution. I think it's a great resource and a good opportunity to sort of bring attention to it. And I think too, as you're looking through these other guides, you see that many of them are tied to as well to improving clean air by, you know, solar energy, electric vehicles, trees, that kind of thing. So they all relate back, even if, you know, not as directly as in this tool guide, but they all relate back to it.
So these are the 8 action guides that are up on our website, with again the 2 that are remaining to go up. And we're looking for organizations to get involved, for organizations to look at this and say, I think I can do this one, I can do the other one, and partner with the NCSA, partner with the Mayor's Sustainability team, the Mayor's Public Engagement team, and do an action. So our ask is, would your organization like to get involved? Or is there anything you see right now that we can take action on right now during the summer? Our goal is to, you know, do these presentations and then have a summer of action where we accomplish any and all of these across the city. So connect with us. This is, if you're not aware of who to contact, this is the email for the NCSA, the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Be part of it. This is Victoria Simon's email from the sustainability team. And then you have your representatives here in the Valley, Vahid and myself. We work very closely here in the Valley. We bleed and breathe San Fernando Valley, so we tend to do things a lot together. Thank you. Thank you for listening to our Green New Deal Neighborhood Council Toolkit presentation.
And I just would also like to make a plug for, as everybody knows, next week is Earth Week, if it hasn't already been Earth Month. But and I know I saw on your agenda that you guys will be talking about Earth Day. Maybe there's some events you have planned, but of course the city has some things planned, and one is I will give you a sneak peek or preview of the campaign that we're going to be rolling out on Earth Day called LA Forever. And it's going to be kind of geared around this toolkit, but sort of garnering attention and advocacy and action related to like personal commitment to and pride to LA, and what you can do to really, make the city not just live on forever, but live on forever in a sustainable way. So we're going to be bringing more attention to it on that day, and that would be a great opportunity to, Earth Day, to maybe share these toolkits with those, outside of the neighborhood council.
So I open it up to any board questions. It looks like there's two attendees have questions, but I'll open up to the board first.
Zoom always makes for lovely awkward pauses after things. I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming and for all of this. So I know that this has been a long process and you guys have put a lot of work into it. I thought the ask at the end for action was really effective. And, so often I feel like, especially at the neighborhood council level, it's a lot of info, and not a lot of here's action you can actually take. So I thought that was great. And the suggestions of, composting workshop in the neighborhood and a free trees giveaway in the neighborhood. I thought those were really great. I have a couple of comments. I'll hold back and let everybody else speak first. I'm sure no one on the board will be surprised with where they'll go, but I'll pause and let everybody else speak. If anybody wants to.
Well, I didn't see any chat situation, so I didn't want to raise my hand and distract people. My name is Jim Fitzpatrick. I'm a member of the committee. Unfortunately, despite having a camera and in computer camera, I'm frozen, but you can hear me, right? So thank you for your presentation. I have been gardening with composting for 40 years because I'm 74. In San Fernando Valley, 2 different homes. And I raise a ton of vegetables, and some people have benefited from my giveaway of lemons and things. But I must tell you, and I don't want to be haranguing and I don't want to be cynical, but I have no use for DWP, none. And with the rebates, I and my neighbors have been stiffed numerous times. I put in 2 200-gallon tanks to collect rainwater in 2013 and barely got 1 reimbursed from them. So when you say DWP is doing this and doing that, they've refused to attend a council meeting for 5 years. They don't show because they don't want to deal with any questions. So I don't think I'm misrepresenting this, but I'll just say 4 of the things that you suggest all require water, including native plants. And DWP, their last billing cycle, they made it 66 days instead of normal 59, 60, which put all these people into tier 3 for water use. We are in the 2nd most severe drought, which has been, nobody's paid attention to it because of COVID, but we've had less than 6 inches of rain in 1 year. So you need water to do 4 of those things that you asked. So I don't have a whole lot of hope. I mean, I raise vegetables in 27, 15-gallon pots with drip irrigation, but it's still a challenge. And most people who are working, you know, I did this while I was working, I'm retired. Most people are not going to go out there and do this. My wife, when she was on the council, we planted tons of trees in Toluca Lake, trying to get DWP to put even any water nearby was a challenge. It still is. So I think you have an uphill battle, and I think maybe there's a wing of DWP that you deal with that's really consumer and public friendly, but most of it is not. So that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry, but I will keep doing what I've been doing for 40 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I think I wrote down some of your feedback, so that's helpful. So I can also bring that back. I think you'll see too, you know, although a lot of the rebate programs are run out of DWP, many of the programs, such as like the free street trees, are run through city plants. And also LA Sanitation does a lot of the programs as well, including because they also oversee the water system. And then related to like some of the more urban ecosystems, there's some of them are run through planning, like the urban agriculture zone that I was mentioning. So, you know, there's like a variety. So I understand your feedback on DWP, and I actually was having a conversation with someone recently, I think it was today, about how they have evolved even a lot in the past 4 years in terms of their openness and willingness to kind of tackle things from a climate change perspective. But also, I think when you look at the toolkit, you can, if you so choose, there are a lot of programs that are not necessarily DWP related.
Thank you.
Kelly, Catherine?
I'm good. That was wonderful. I'm really excited.
Can I ask a question? I was curious how many people are like aware of the Green New Deal. I'm just, because I am like, I mean, I think I read through it like every day just because it's so much of my work. So I'm very curious though, like from the outside public and people who are interested in this topic, obviously, how aware.
We might be a little bit self-selecting on the environmental committee.
True.
But certainly we're aware of it. We've been talking about it for a while. Go ahead, Kelly.
I would just say that I think the average stakeholder is not very aware of it.
Sure.
There's a lot of other city programs that seem to contradict it on a daily basis. So then it doesn't really help kind of build the awareness. But I want to thank you specifically for coming up with a program that's with the neighborhood councils. I mean, to me, that's a truly fantastic thing. I've been involved with it, neighborhood councils I've had a board seat for 5 years. I've been involved for another, 3-4 years before that. And I just feel like there's so much the neighborhood councils could do, and there's not that many partnerships. There's not that many, there's really not a whole lot of synergy between different city departments and the neighborhood councils. So I really appreciate that piece of it.
I want to go ahead and toss it to our members of the public who've been patiently waiting with their hands up. Hannah, yes.
I do have one more thing, but I can wait till after the public if we would prefer.
I would love to let them have a moment to jump in. So David, I believe you are going to be able to unmute yourself now.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. I'll start with the usual Zoom call. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you very much. I live in Silver Lake. I'm on the land use committee here. I'm also a stakeholder in Toluca Lake. I've been trying to diminish the scope of a project at Cahuenga and Bloomfield, and have gotten absolutely nowhere with the Toluca Lake Land Use Committee, who supported it. The neighborhood council supported it, so did the city planning commission, so did Plum, so did the city council, and so did Nithya Raman. And I'm very, very concerned that CEQA is being eroded at the local level and at the state level, and it seems that nobody is doing a single thing about it. Great presentation. I heard a lot of it as I was waiting patiently to say my piece. And I really think a group like this needs to be activist, not just in terms of what I might say are the usual but important environmental matters, but these moves like SB 9 and 10, if you don't know what those are, you need to do your homework. And if you don't know who Scott Weiner is, or Atkins, or Chu, or Skinner, you need to do your homework. These people are trying to pass bills that will be terrible for the environment of Toluca Lake, Silver Lake, and all across California. This attempt to demolish single-family homes and the gardens and the lawns are very important for the environment. They need to be up on that. Also, these buildings at Toluca, Cahuenga, Bloomfield were demolished without proper watering. Did any of you notice that? Probably not. Didn't hear it come up in your agenda. Maybe it wasn't on the agenda. I think you need to be way, way more activist and on top of protecting our neighborhood. Maybe that's not your job. Maybe somebody will set me straight on this, but I'm just not happy about the way this stuff is going down in beautiful Toluca Lake and how it's being wrecked in so many ways by these horrific developers and our legislators, including Nithya Raman, who continue to sell out the community and our health and safety. I welcome your comments if you're allowed to. Thanks.
So I will say Caroline, Victoria, and Vahid are not really the people who have control over things like that. And we as the environmental committee don't necessarily have any purview on that as far as, I mean, it is the domain of the Planning and Land Use Committee within the GTLNC, but we certainly understand concerns about development that removes trees and other plant life. We are big proponents of that. So we hear your concerns and we appreciate them. I'm not sure that our committee has significant power in this area.
By the way, the tree people only protect 3 kinds of trees. Did you know that? I mean, you guys need to expand the scope of what you do and then do a better job. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Dana, you should be able to unmute.
Hi there. Thank
Hi,
you
Dana.
so much for that presentation. It was really, really optimistic and encouraging. As a longtime member of Toluca Lake and resident and homeowner, I have been really involved with the Garden Club and beautification partners. And what I've found is at every turn, we are challenged when we take trees, then we are lugging buckets of water to keep them alive until they take root. So at any time that we take on a project, there's this aspect of it that isn't part of the whole plan or the whole deal. And so when I look ahead to, this is a great idea, I'm really encouraged and optimistic, I look at projects like the Addison Cahuenga lot, where we have a DWP lease for $1 and we cannot break ground because of legal and things like that. It's a totally funded project and we can't break ground because of the bureaucracy. And so I've found that the community members who are most encouraged to take action and they're most excited about these opportunities cannot sustain a 10-year project. They just, nobody can do it. Some people can, but the best workers and the most resource-rich people are so overwhelmingly frustrated with the bureaucracy that every single one of these projects, I saw with planting trees, with the sustainable planting and those kind of things, that it's literally, you're hobbled. And so I wonder if there's an opportunity to, if you're doing one of these projects that hits, let's say, 3 of these topics to be ushered through or, you know, escorted through in some way the bureaucracy, as opposed to just take a number and you're in the mix, because nobody can do that. I mean, we've tried. And so I just want to throw it back to both of you to say, what is the best way to try to land some of these and just take action and get it in the ground, get it going.
And Dana, if I may, I want to jump in and note that the Cahuenga Addison lot was originally proposed as a community garden, and our ability to create a community garden has been significantly hamstrung by bureaucracy. You know, it has to be locked at all times and extremely limited access to it. There were just so many roadblocks to creating a community garden, and we'd be interested to know what the Green New Deal has in the way of actually making those feasible.
Yeah, at least I would start with, you know, another one of the main goals for this Green New Deal toolkit is to get community connected, while the focus is with neighborhood councils who understand how to reach their elected officials, is for the community to also understand who to reach out to help perhaps push some of those red tapes that you see if you're doing projects without getting elected official offices involved, right? You know, Vahid and I, you know, that's what we're here for, to help push, if we can, some of these projects. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I mean, I would be really interested, and if you want to send me like a follow-up email with some bullets on like some of the things, like, you know, what the project is that you were trying to implement, where, and then what are some of the issues that you encountered, because as I mentioned earlier, like food systems is a new area for me, but I have seen that there are some significant, despite some like well-intentioned policies, there are still some significant red tape that just can feel very overwhelming. And then we're not achieving the goals that we set out for ourselves, despite trying to put in place the policies to support it. So I would really love to get feedback and help so that we can try and correct some of those, so that like this red tape doesn't prevent us from achieving these ambitious goals. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, and I would appreciate an email if you have time.
Sure.
Thank
and
you.
We have a couple things that we're going to talk about right after this that hit three of these topics. So that might be good timing.
On that note, I do not see any other hands up. So Hannah, you said you had one other thing?
Yeah, I one quick one and one slightly larger one. I do just want to echo also what Dana said, because that has been, I think Addison Cahuenga is like a 12-year project now, and it is a tiny little lot. And it has just been impossible to get anything planted or moved or water installed. Every time we try and do something, we hit a roadblock. So echoing what she says is a lot of times there's good intention, and then actually implementing anything, especially for a volunteer community group, which the neighborhood council is just impossible. One quick thing was just, I noticed a lot of the toolkit information. Yeah, I'm a renter. And I know that this is an experience for a lot of renters. There's not a lot of incentive for landlords to make some updates that are green to houses that they rent out. If, you know, my partner and I owned our house, we would have put solar on it 3 years ago. If we owned our house, we would have replaced our lawn many years ago. We would have planted more trees. It doesn't make a ton of financial sense for us to invest in long-term changes to the house that we live in. The only exception we've made is installing an electric car charger, because we have an electric car. Other than that, there's just really no incentive for our landlord to make those adjustments to the house that we currently live in. And so kind of just throwing that back to you, in a city that's 60% renters, it's great if solar is already on the roof, but if it's not, it eliminates a large chunk of those toolkit opportunities for a huge segment of the population of LA. And then the bigger thing, I think this will be no surprise to anybody who knows me, is I was surprised to see no mention of active or public transportation. Especially, you know, we so often throw environmental stuff onto the individual, and very often the individual changes that we can make, reducing food waste, reducing plastic waste, they're extremely minimal. The responsibility really to make effective change falls to larger corporations, companies, and cities. Vehicles are actually the one exception to that. You know, we live in a state that is almost a quarter of our emissions come from personal car use. And studies have said, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, even if every single car purchased starting tomorrow was electric, we still wouldn't hit our emissions goals by 2030. I've been an active transportation activist for a while. I found one of the biggest barriers to use is actually awareness and information. So there's a huge opportunity with these toolkits, and I was really surprised not to see any mention of that. Even stuff like, for drivers, rules of the road, that bikers are allowed to be in a full lane, and it's actually safer for them to ride in the middle than it is for them to press up against parked cars. You know, that bicycles in the city of Los Angeles are also allowed on sidewalks. Even something like helping put together a template so that neighborhood councils can, you know, advertise the bus schedules and timetables, how to use a tap card. A lot of times I find that sometimes the barrier to use is people don't want to look like they don't know where they're going when they get to the subway. So education about how to use those systems, how to use our tap cards, how often the buses run and where they go, common destinations, you know, for folks who live in that area. It just feels like a massive missed opportunity for one of the most effective things that an individual can do to change, you know, how effective they are towards stopping climate change. So I wanted to ask if there was a reason that that was omitted, and if there's an opportunity to put something together where, you know, we can start to educate, especially now. I mean, this is anecdotal, of course, but I've seen more e-bikes and personal electric scooters since the pandemic started than I've ever seen. There's just a massive amount of people starting to get out onto their bikes and onto e-bikes and using alternative modes of transportation. We also continuously see the city vote over and over and over again in massive numbers to spend money to make these systems better. And so I'm a little perplexed why that's not mentioned. Is that such a huge part of reaching our goals?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And the LA Forever campaign that I was mentioning earlier, mobility, specifically focused actually more on like walking and taking opportunities for like short trips, making them walkable trips. Is a big part of there's like 4 areas that the campaign is going to initially focus on, and that's one of the 4. And I think when we were, like we said at the beginning, these were voted upon by the advisory group of like what were going to be the top 10. And so that was on the list of 30, but it didn't make the top 10. But that doesn't mean it. And actually, my boss, the chief sustainability officer, was like, "How come we don't have a toolkit that's talking about like how to get around your neighborhood without driving a car?" And I think I would love ideas of, you know, once we are probably going to create a toolkit geared towards that, like what would the neighborhood councils do? Like what would we be recommending the neighborhood councils do in that area? So I'd be interested in that, but I think you're completely right in terms of like, I mean, since 2019, 8 new neighborhoods got Metro bike shares. During the pandemic, 60 miles of bike lanes have been put in. You know, we've expanded bus lanes throughout the city. There's been a lot of investment in public and just like personal, like alternative modes of transportation that's happening at the city level. But I would be interested in how you think the neighborhood council, and I think Caroline, you want to say
I wanted to share the 3 that were on the top, but just didn't get voted on were host a community workshop on how to take transit, host a community workshop on the pros of public transportation, and then bike lanes. So it did make the top 30. It just, this particular advisory group didn't vote on it. But like Victoria mentioned, this is a living document. Would love, you know, to work something with you and other neighborhood council members and putting together that action guide.
Yeah, if you guys, we can connect over email after if you like, because I can also, not just me, I've been a little pulled out of neighborhood council stuff because of my job, but I know a number of other neighborhood council members throughout the city who would also be really interested, I think, in helping with that. And I can both work with you guys and connect you with them.
Great, that's great.
And then
To your,
one thing I can't not talk about for, and I won't take up too much time, but since Victoria, we have you, let's talk about these. Let's talk about how this is less than half of 1 year's worth of plastic that it takes to have parking permits for my one household. This is less than half of 1 year. So instead of getting, it has to be updated every 3 times a year.
Oh,
So
what?
instead of getting, you know, a sticker that goes on top, I get a whole new piece of plastic. And that's just one household. On my block, there's 22 households that have double this as well. So Department of Transportation. So I just wanted to make a pitch to have different departments buy into sustainability.
Yeah. I did just want to mention too, Hannah, you talked to the rental piece if you're a renter, and we really did try to incorporate that into every single toolkit, like what can a renter do? And so like to your point about solar, if you're a renter, you can actually, obviously you can't force your landlord to install solar, but you can actually make your portion of the electricity that you purchase from the grid from solar. So it'll be like from a, you know, larger solar plant that will be, so your portion will be solar energy. And in terms of like street trees, you can't, we definitely grappled with that a lot. Like, how can we force the landlord to put in a street tree? But we did offer opportunities of like educating your landlord about, you know, like it wouldn't take much and you could just put it here and all you have to do is call and they will recommend the specific tree that would be best for this, you know, plot of land and that kind of thing. So we really did try to think of the renters because, as you said, they're a huge percentage of the population in Los Angeles, and we would be missing out on, you know, like more than half of the people here if we didn't try to specifically think of ways that they could be engaged, because of course they're so important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's not always remembered, us renters. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.